And a good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, director at WEIU. My co-host is back, Gerard Singleton.
Yes, sir. Good to be back, sir.
And making her first appearance today, representing CASA of East Central Illinois, is Jolenne Baker-Robison.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jeff.
I'm definitely going to pull up that mic to you.
Okay.
All right?
How about now?
And Jolenne, you are an advocate coordinator and a training specialist at CASA.
I am. I am with CASA of East Central Illinois. We are a nonprofit organization that advocates for the best interests of children in foster care, and we cover Coles and Cumberland counties.
So with that two-pronged job, can you explain what you do there at CASA and how you train and things like that?
So I carry a caseload of my own, and I also do the training, the required training for volunteers and staff.
Okay.
Keep track of their continuing education. I keep track of and
Have you move
facilitate
Hold that up
the
towards it. There you go.
background checks. Better?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Jack of all trades, master of some.
But you are an advocate. That means you carry a caseload. How many,
I do.
How many do you work with in a month?
In my caseload, I think I have now 20 cases, almost 35 kiddos in my caseload. Total, we have 70 cases for the program, which translates to about 120 children that
Okay.
we're advocating for.
All right.
What's the length of time that you typically observe each case?
So cases, on average, last about 2 years. Some less, some more, depending on the situation.
What's the longest one that you've had to deal with?
I think we have cases right now that children have been in care in some way, shape, or form since 2022, I think is our oldest case.
Awesome. 3.5 years
Yeah.
or so at least.
Yeah.
I would always like to, the job you do is very tough, obviously.
It is.
But the best part of when we talk to CASA, usually once a year, once every 18 months or so, everybody seems to have that's come in and represented CASA in the past always has that one success story instead of always talking about the bad news. Do you have one that you can, I know you can't name names, but can you have
I
that
do.
success story?
I have several. I'm trying to decide which one I want to talk about. I have success stories where children have been returned to their parents and everything worked out wonderfully the way we want it to. And I have success stories where that didn't happen and we went the other direction and children were adopted. So my favorite one is a kiddo who was born with a life-threatening health issue.
Okay.
And that child was eventually adopted by a NICU nurse that took care of her while she was in the hospital. There's a lot of detail in that case that I can't mention, but it was just almost miraculous in the way that this person stepped forward and said, I am going to take care of this child. The foster was well versed in the care that the child needed. It was just almost as if it was supposed to happen. And, you know, over the several years that the case took, the foster parent stayed in touch regularly and just was very good at explaining to me all the medical terminology that went into so I could put in my court report, to the judge, this person knows how to take care of this child inside and out.
Everything's still going all right then with them?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, what kind of inspired you to go this route of children advocacy?
It's been a long road. I never worked in this area before in my life, but my parents, my biological parents, they were foster parents while I was in high school. So all 4 years of my high school years, we had foster children in my home. I have a biological sister, so it was me and my sister, and I want to say between 20 and 25 kiddos
Wow.
throughout the 4 years that we were a foster family. That never left me. And I wanted to do something that would make a difference because that was the early 90s. And, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of research then about early childhood trauma and how it impacts child development, how it impacts socio-emotional development, brain development, how it impacts someone later in life in their adulthood with health issues. And I just wanted to make a difference in the lives of children that, in a system I was somewhat familiar with. And I also wanted to somehow, through my advocacy, encourage parents to do what they need to do. And watch that happen for them. Watch that happen for them, for their children, the return home. They have the resources that they didn't think they had before. And so, working somewhere else, doing something else for profit, it just wasn't doing it for me at all. And I wanted to sleep at night. So I applied to CASA VCI, and that was the end of that.
You said you had 20 to 25, foster brothers and sisters. Do you stay in touch with them, or how does that work?
I do. Not very regularly. I think that, and I don't push because I feel like they don't want to remember all of that, or they've moved on. They've reached out to me through social media, and I've accepted. And it's not very often, but I know that they are, I believe, okay as far as social media can tell you. As far as the rest of the children, there are a couple of kiddos I'd love to find out where they are, but I've tried and I can't find them anywhere. So,
what are some challenges that you've either dealt with in the past or that you may potentially be dealing with presently that either you've seen develop and get better over your time in advocacy, or some things that you're still working on addressing?
Challenges. There are plenty of those. I would say that the biggest challenge as a court-appointed special advocate, there is a cast of thousands in every case. So you have the parents, you have the children, and you have DCFS, and then you have also DCFS contracts with agencies to handle the sheer volume of cases in the state. So we have agencies like One Hope United. You may have seen their office on the square. They're in Mattoon now. So by the time CASA is involved in a case, when we are appointed at a shelter care hearing and I'm introducing myself to parents, I'm trying to figure out where foster parents are, where kiddos placed, all the information and everything. That is a challenge because not everybody knows what CASA's role is. Parents have had enough people in their face. They don't care who I am. They don't want to talk, and I completely understand that. So it's a challenge to, I guess for lack of a better term, ingratiate yourself
That's a good way.
Yeah.
That's a good way to work.
as an advocate working for a nonprofit to advocate for the best interest. If you're a parent, I'm advocating the best interest of your child. Well, who are you? Excellent question. So building those relationships is a challenge.
And to carry on what Gerard said is, do you have like an opening line? I don't want to use the word sales pitch, but do you kind of have that, like, like Jolene Robinson?
You almost kind of have to sometimes. I gauge by the individual. If a parent has, or family member has appeared in court and they are receptive, I will approach them. A foster parent, I just call them and introduce myself. It really is just, and it goes the same for kiddos as well. Trying to engage with and build a rapport with children as well. So it really depends on the situation. I go with my gut. If kiddo does not want to talk to me, that is totally fine. We can try again later. But yeah, hi, my name's Jolene. I'm with CASA. I'm advocating for your child in this case. Here's my phone number. Here's my information. I'll be visiting. Call me if you have any questions, and we start from there, basically.
And does the judge in the court kind of tell that to the people, or is it
Not really?
Or is it something on the side?
No. He just, so at shelter care hearings, those are not always heard by. They're never heard by. Almost never heard by our juvenile judge. Because they're emergency hearings, they have to be done within 48 hours of protective custody. They are presided over by any judge that's available at that time.
Okay.
So they'll just appoint CASA in open court. We hand in our appointing orders, they sign it, circuit clerk, blah, blah, blah. But they don't really explain CASA's role.
All right.
That's our job.
Okay.
It's a tough uphill in the beginning.
Yeah, you got to win
And
them
we,
over.
yeah, you do. And staff does that. We don't involve our volunteers in that process whatsoever because I feel they do enough.
Okay.
I would ask, how does the organization kind of tackle making sure that the child is present and aware of what's going on through the legal process? Because I'd imagine with a variety of ages throughout these different cases, you kind of break things down to these kids who may not necessarily fully understand their situation.
Yes. So we work with foster parents quite a bit to educate kiddos, gauge where they're at, their understanding of the process. If they have questions, and we're at a visit, I answer all of their questions, black and white. Now, if they're taught, grade school age, I don't bring up the case. I want to know how they're doing emotionally because that's going to tell me more than me saying, well, do you have any questions about your case to a 7-year-old? No. So I want to know, how was school today? What's your favorite color? What do you want to play with? Or we just sit in silence and we color. And I let them just be because I think that kiddos that age, they have zero clue what's going on. They may have some, but they have no control over what's happened in their life. So I make it as stress-free as possible when I go to visit. I take toys, I'll take books. My older kiddos in care, my teenagers, there's a lot more discussion. Especially if they are 14, 15, 16, we talk about goals of independence versus adoption or return home because the amount of benefits they could get through DCFS if they have a goal of independence is tremendous. So there's a lot more discussion of the legal process and what could happen in a hearing and, if parents contest and then we set a new hearing, there's going to be testimony, they may not want to go and listen to testimony. Judge Braden really kind of discourages kiddos from attending any hearing where there's going to be testimony. So it depends on the age, it depends on the situation, their level of understanding. I don't know. With the younger kiddos, I just want them to associate CASA with stress-free. What do you want to play? What do you want to read? What do you want to do? Let's go out and play in the dirt. And my observations of them is what I document.
If the little ones do ask questions, is it pretty much, do you answer bluntly with the facts, or do you try to give them a more of a softer, like, your mom and dad are having issues, I'm here to help?
I go with the softer because you have to, especially if you are, if your case, the child is placed with relatives, you have to, be careful on what discussions you're having in front of the kiddo with a relative or with the, foster parent who might be familiar with what's going on. So if, a 7-year-old asks me, anything about the case, my answer is, I'm not sure, kiddo, but what would you like me to tell the judge? Yeah. I don't want to promise them anything because when I first started training for this job, my trainer at the time said, give yourself a year to understand juvenile hearing progress. And they were right. It can go 100 different ways at any given time. So if kiddo asks me, if I have a direct answer that I know will carry through, I will give them that answer. But it's typically, I'm not sure, kiddo, but that's why I'm here, is what would you like me to tell the judge? What would you like to see happen?
All right. How many different court-appointed special advocates do you have in your employ now? Or I guess they're volunteers, but how many are there, and is there a need for more?
We have 15 to 20 volunteers right now. We have several that are on leave, so we kind of keep them on the back burner.
Okay.
We need a lot more.
Okay.
If we've got 120 kiddos, we could use probably double what we've got now.
So is there a training session starting, or is it continuously training when someone...
Training is continuously offered.
Okay.
Before COVID, we would offer in-person 8-week training courses. The amount of training that has to be completed is 30 hours. And we have an 8-chapter, 8-week training course that's always available. But since COVID, I've not had a class in person.
Okay.
I've had people reach out, and I offer them either an in-person class or we have online training. They choose the online, and it's guided learning. So I send them material, and there's 5 chapters. I send them material, they review, they let me know when they're ready, and we review either via Zoom or in person. And I go over the finer points, especially that are Coles and Cumberland County specific, because every county is a little different in how juvenile
You guys
hearings.
just cover Coles and Cumberland?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Then, like if somebody wants to sign up, they get trained, and they're prepared to be, an advocate for CASA. How do you get them ready then for that first time when they're going to either go to court, meet the parents or the kid, or how's that work?
So we just had a new volunteer sworn in a couple Fridays ago. We are waiting on her background check. So just to give the criteria for someone who may or may not be interested in volunteering, you have to be 21 years of age, pass a background check, and complete 30 hours of pre-service training and 2 hours of mandated reporter training. She was sworn in, and we're waiting on her background check to be clear, and then I can assign her to a case.
All right.
I've already got in mind, by the time we roll around to swearing in, I've already got a couple cases in mind, because I ask throughout training, what would your preference be? Would you rather, because sometimes if a volunteer has biological school-age children, they may want that age because it's fresh in their mind.
Yeah.
Maybe they want infants. Maybe they would prefer to advocate for infants, or maybe they would prefer to advocate for teenagers in care. So I kind of gauge where they're at in their preference and assign a case accordingly. Once that happens, we kind of facilitate beginning of, setting up a visit, going to the foster home. I go to their first few visits with them if they would like, and go from there. Step-by-step process.
You eventually have to release the hounds, though, and let them go on their
Eventually have to let them go. Yeah, do their own thing and say, I'm here if you need me.
I feel like you learn a lot on the job, like actually getting in there and getting some
Yes.
experience.
Yes, definitely.
Being that the organization works in tandem with the court system, are there any changes you'd like to see within the court system so that these children can be better served? Because I know, like, in terms of timeliness or just
Yes.
accessibility.
Is there anything I'd like to see change?
You'd actually not like to have a job, is right? That's usually be the stock.
think
In
that's
a
the goal,
perfect
yeah.
world,
Yeah.
exactly. The amount of time a case takes is lengthy for a child. Because the goal in every case begins as return home within 12 months. And it's a rolling 12 months because things happen, time is needed, services need to be completed. COVID really threw a wrench in that. As agencies, service providers were no longer offering in person. They were doing telehealth or not at all. So, what I would like to see change, oh my goodness. I don't know. In a perfect world, I would like to see kiddos not removed from their parents, parents offered services and take advantage of the services. That actually does happen. They're called intact cases. I would like to see cases, just shorten. That would be nice. Shorten.
Is it the legal system and DCFS that actually kind of gets the ball rolling because there's been some kind of incident when you come in?
Yes.
Okay.
So how that happens or how that starts is if someone has made a hotline call and DCFS determines whether or not they're going to investigate those allegations. Mandated reporters can call and report anything, even if they feel like it's not worthy of reporting, report it anyway. First they're going to say is, we'll keep it on file. They'll keep it from information. Because if something more egregious happens down the line, there's a timeline. So any mandated reporters out there listening, just make the call. Hotline call is made. DCFS decides, okay, this is enough to go out and investigate. And the evidence that has to be presented to the court is gathered by the investigator. They make the decision whether or not to either offer intact services, meaning they're keeping the family intact. We'll offer mom and dad some, or primary caregiver, some mental health services, some substance abuse treatment services, come up with a safety plan for the children. And a lot of cases start out that way, but parents fail to be successful with that. And so the decision is made then to ultimately take protective custody. Children are typically placed with, DCFS has gotten better or has turned toward placing children with family more now, which is better for kiddos.
Makes sense.
It's a lot less traumatic, but the investigators have to weigh which is going to be more traumatic, the things that are going on or the removal, which is going to be worse on these kids and the entire family. So I don't envy them that job. Godspeed to all of our DCFS investigators. But if they make the decision to take protective custody, children are placed with either traditional or fictive kin, which could be a friend of the family or family members.
So they try to keep them close, like if, in Coles or Cumberland County?
Yes.
With
Yes.
Is that
this
100%?
network of
or is
family?
it-
No.
Okay.
I have cases in Chicago.
Okay.
So all over the state, I had a kiddo that was actually with family. It ultimately was placed with family in Tennessee. So we did a lot of virtual visits until that case came to closure. So within 48 hours of protective custody, a shelter care hearing has to happen. We are made aware of that hearing. We take our appointing orders. We go, we listen to testimony. We have an attorney in Coles County and Cumberland. Our attorney is there with us, and that is where it's determined whether or not there's probable cause that children were taken into protective custody. And that is where we're appointed. So,
sorry, I keep interrupting, but in the
it's
training
fine.
program, you said the eight week or the 5, 5K, whatever. Is there any legal training involved, or is it all about how to deal with being a social worker?
there
/
is, yes, there is some legal training. It's basically a timeline of a juvenile hearing progression that is, that could happen in each case. There's no way to teach someone all the things about juvenile hearing progression because there's, status hearings on paternity tests. There's permanency hearings to see, how parents are doing efforts and progress wise. A case can go in any direction at any given time. If there is a biological parent out there who has become aware their child is in care, they have a legal right to attend the hearings and be a part of that case, party to that case. So, did that answer your question?
No, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough job. Yeah, we're talking to Jolenne Robinson today from Robinson. I keep getting that wrong, from CASA of East Central Illinois.
Okay.
And we have a few minutes left with her today. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is when you were growing up in the foster home situation, but was there a magic moment you just knew I'm going to get into child advocacy?
No,
or
not at that time. At that time, I was in my teens. I was, your brain is elsewhere. Trying to figure out where you're going to go to college and getting out of the house. And so, no, I really didn't until much later in life where I decided, because I thought about them all the time.
I bet,
After all of that and through the years, I thought about them all the time.
What's the most palpable difference, since you said you have experience dealing with cases with more urban kids or kids from urban areas? What's the most palpable difference between serving this immediate community and doing something for a kid from a bigger area like Chicago? Is the set of circumstances different, or do you have a different approach?
I have not. Well, I've only advocated for kiddos in this area.
Okay.
So I don't really have anything to compare it to. I do know that there are two different types of CASA programs. One is the GAL program, Guardian Ad Litem program, which means we have legal representation, we can call witnesses, testify, we are party to the case.
And they're paid, right?
The staff is.
Yeah,
The staff is, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
For instance, in counties like Cook County, the huge county, the CASA program in that county is friend of the court only. They're not appointed to every JA case, juvenile abuse, JA, because of the sheer volume of cases. So there's no way they could appoint a CASA. They don't have enough.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think in a larger county where I think it would be incredibly frustrating, honestly.
Are there any like tangential resources that you either recommend to the children in your cases, or even like the parents, or additional resources that you recommend? Like, I don't know if you all encompass like counseling or mental health services, or even like medical services.
Yeah, CASA can recommend the sky turn purple. We can recommend anything. Whether or not it's taken into action is another story. But it gives the judge a good, kind of like a second pair of eyes on the whole situation. We're there to just observe and report and make our recommendations. So if we're observing during visits that kiddo may need some counseling, children are typically referred for counseling in every case by the caseworker. But if we see that they might need a little bit more than that, we will document that. We put that in our court report, and then our recommendations, we recommend that kiddo maybe have a mental health assessment for further, maybe some individual psychotherapy, or because we're not experts, but we can recommend some things that we feel might be in the best interest of that child.
We have a minute left. How do you stay positive in doing the job you do when you do deal with a lot of despair and some tragedy?
So what I tell my trainees is that you may never see the impact you have on a kiddo's life. You may never see that. You have to have faith that somewhere down the line, even if they hate you now, and I think that goes for every child. You know, we were all kids once. Everybody was a child once. Think about that. That you may not see the positive impact right now, but it will be there. And the statistics and research speaks to that. CASA is involved. A kiddo is more likely to have a better outcome.
Thanks so much for coming in today, Jolene. We
Thank
learned a lot.
you. Thank you.
Appreciate what you do for our community.
Thank you.
It's a great job.
Thank you.
So that is Jolene Baker-Robison. We will see you next week. We are
WEIU.